Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those on the West Coast. Thank you for joining us today for the latest in our webinar series. I'm Emily Feenstra. I'm the Deputy Director of the U.S. Water Alliance, and we're really excited to be co-hosting this webinar with our friends at the River Network, so thank you for partnering with us on this. Today's webinar is entitled Strengthening Flood Resilience Through Integrated Water Management. And we know this is such an important topic for so many communities. Floods strike suddenly without a lot of warning. They can cause catastrophic damage and really require regional solutions that go beyond traditional hard infrastructure projects a lot of the time. So today we're going to hear from two leaders in the field, Steve Hirschner, who leads the Cedar Rapids Utilities Department, and Brad Klamer, a senior planner in New Orleans for the New Orleans Water and Sewerage Board, to give us their perspectives and lessons learned. But first, for those of us who might be joining for the first time, to give you a little background on the U.S. Water Alliance, we were formed in 2008. Our motto is One Water, One Future, and we bring together a broad array of leaders from business, agriculture, nonprofits, the public sector, et cetera, to secure a sustainable water future for all. And our programs can be segmented into three main buckets, our work. First is educate. We work to educate the nation on the true value of water and the need for investment. We do that through our signature initiative, the Value Water Campaign. Second, we accelerate the adoption of One Water management strategies through a program of national dialogues, papers, and policy. And third, we celebrate what works and drive innovation in the water sector by highlighting One Water champions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over quickly to Deanna Toledo, Leadership Development Director at the River Network. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. This is Deanna Toledo, and thanks for that introduction, Emily. For those of you who are new to River Network, I want to just introduce our organization as well. We are a 28-year-old organization, and over those almost 3 decades, we've filled a unique niche within the environmental community. Our focus is primarily on the 2,000-plus river and watershed organizations that are working at the state and local level working towards healthy rivers. But as you see today, we're also trying to engage a much broader community to support these efforts. So it's a pleasure to partner with U.S. Water Alliance on this webinar. Our focus is further structured around 3 strategic areas: clean water, ample water, and strong champions. And we provide our community and anyone who's interested access to proven best practices through webinars like these, via our website, our annual conference, River Rally, publications, and a lot more, including facilitation of organizations and coalitions around the country. So with that, I want to recognize our webinar sponsors, both the Pisces and the Kresge Foundation. I want to thank them for their support, and also the Urban Waters Learning Network, which is an EPA-funded peer-to-peer network of people and organizations that are doing work on urban waterways and the communities that surround them. Right now, the Learning Network is over 100 organizations strong. If you are unfamiliar with the Learning Network, please take a look at that link there on the bottom of the picture. And for those of you who are interested in continuing conversations around integrated water management and how you might bring more of this approach or encourage this approach in your own communities, we'd love to continue peer conversations around how we can do that for folks who are community focused. So again, you can find my information at the end of the webinar and also through this website here, urbanwaterslearningnetwork.org. So with that, I want to go ahead quickly introduce today's presenters. I'll go ahead and introduce both of them now so then we can move right from one presentation to the next. We are very lucky to have Steve Hirschner, Utilities Director for the City of Cedar Rapids in Iowa. As such, he's focused on the delivery of water, wastewater, and solid waste services to Cedar Rapids customers and industries. And in various capacities, he's participated as a representative for municipal wastewater treatment or point sources during several statewide initiatives, most recently in the development of the state's point source nutrient reduction strategy. He has a bachelor's degree from Iowa State University and serves on a number of different leadership positions with several nonprofit organizations. So we'll be hearing from Steve first, and then we'll hear from Brad Clammer, who is Senior City Planner at the Sewage and Water Board in New Orleans in the Environmental Affairs Department. Brad's work is primarily focused on stormwater management and the development and implementation of green infrastructure plan. He is a certified floodplain manager and a member of the American Planning Association Water Working Group, the Greater New Orleans Water Collaborative, and also an early member of the Urban Waters Learning Network. He has a BA in psychology from Tulane, a master's in urban and regional planning from University of New Orleans, specializing in environmental planning and hazard planning. So with that, we are so grateful, Steve and Brad, and so appreciative that you're willing to share your expertise here with everybody on this webinar. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Steve.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today about what we've been doing in Cedar Rapids. Wanted to set the stage here initially. When you look at Cedar Rapids, and particularly in when we talk about flood resilience, we have to look at 2008. This is a time when the city experienced a flood condition that was, we'd had a 19 to 20 foot flood on several previous occurrences over approximately 150 years. In June of 2008, we experienced 31 feet. That obviously led to some significant challenges, as we've tried to highlight on this slide. Approximately 14 to 15% of the community was directly impacted by floodwaters. It damaged thousands of homes, multiple public buildings, and many businesses. There were approximately 18,000, a little over 18,000 citizens that were evacuated during that time. Ultimately, as a result of this flood, we did purchase and demolish approximately 1,300 homes and commercial buildings. And as you can see, that we experienced upwards of $5.4 billion in direct flood damage and indirect lost business costs. From a utilities perspective, this event obviously was a significant challenge as well. This is a slide of our wastewater treatment facility for the city of Cedar Rapids. We handle a population service area of approximately 180,000 people. Our facility was completely offline for 12 days, and as you can imagine, that had significant consequences to the ability to manage sewage throughout the community and even in some of our neighboring communities. So clearly, we needed to develop some strategies for mitigating this. We were able to obtain FEMA funding through their hazard mitigation program. It's kind of hard to see from this slide, but we now have a comprehensive flood protection system for our wastewater treatment facility, approximately at a cost of approximately $20 million. 17 of that came from FEMA, $1 million came from the state, and $2 million came from the city of Cedar Rapids. That does provide us a system that is will protect the plant to 34 feet. As you can see in the background, we had some recent flooding. I'm going to share some more information about that. But obviously, the facility was able to manage that flood stage very easily this time. This was our water treatment facility in 2008. The treatment facility itself did not receive any significant flood damage, but our well system, as evidenced in this, we have a total of 50 wells in the community, 5 horizontal collector wells, as you can see from this slide, and another 45 vertical wells. This is a picture of one of our vertical wells. When you look at this slide, and then when we go to the next one, as you can see, the top of this platform, at that point it was about that high, was where the 31 feet was at. So our mitigation step for the well system was, again, to raise our power supply and raise those motors on the wells up above, again, so they'd be protected to the 34 feet level. So that kind of allows me to set the stage for some of the steps that we've taken since then, and I will provide some slides a little bit later that talk about some of the concrete steps we've done. But back in early 2014, we became aware that the Regional Conservation Partnership Program had been implemented as part of the that recent Farm Bill, and that Regional Conservation Partnership Program allowed entities like a water treatment or wastewater treatment facility to become part of some of those RCPP projects. So we looked at that program and we felt that it addressed some pretty critical needs for our community. Number one, some of the funding streams, as you can see evidence from this slide, pardon me, allowed us to look at things like public health and welfare from a flooding perspective, but also allowed us to address some of the concerns that we had from increasing nitrate levels that were a concern for our alluvial well supply, in terms of making sure that we didn't have nitrate levels that exceeded the maximum contaminant levels. So we developed, in partnership with an extensive partnership group, a Middle Cedar Partnership project, and that allowed us to use some of the existing Natural Resources Conservation Service resources, some of the County Soil and Water District resources as well, to look at going upstream in our watershed to implement activities that would help retain water on the landscape and could potentially mitigate some of those flood situations, but also have some benefits from a water quality perspective in terms of holding some of those nutrients up there as well so they wouldn't impact our water supply. Cedar Rapids is a unique community in that we have a significant amount of manufacturing. It's not necessarily manufacturing that you think in the conventional sense. We have a tremendous amount of food processing, biotechnology. As a raw product in this community, we use over 100,000 bushels of soybeans every day and over 1 million bushels of corn every day. So in many cases, some of those crops are coming from areas also in that upstream watershed. So there was an ability for us to help close the loop on ensuring we had those raw products, but trying to find ways through cover crops and other tools, in addition to wetlands, things that offered more benefit from a flood impact standpoint, just allowed us to really firm up that connection with our upstream watershed. This is a slide. There were 3 funding pools available through the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. This slide represents one of them, the critical conservation areas, was approximately 35% of the funding pool. There were some nationwide options available for people to apply for as well. That was 40%, and then statewide initiatives had 25% of the funding pool. We pursued the funding pool available through the state of Iowa. It was the only funding pool that did make the accommodation of looking at projects that were both water quality and water quantity based. And clearly, for the city of Cedar Rapids, as you saw from my slides in 2008, it's essential that we be able to talk about both of those elements. We were fortunate on the basis of our pre-proposal to be asked by NRCS to provide a full proposal. We did that in October of 2014, and we're happy to hear the news in January of 2015 that we did receive slightly over $2 million through NRCS to support our Middle Cedar Partnership project. We also have an additional 15 partners in addition to us that are contributing $2.3 million towards that project. And right now, the clock started on that project once we completed the agreement with NRCS in June of 2015. I just wanted to kind of summarize briefly some of the aspects of what this work will involve through our Middle Cedar Partnership project. There are currently 5 HUC 12 watersheds that are part of our project. That's a total of about a little over 130,000 acres. You can see the goals that we have from a nitrogen and phosphorus standpoint. But if you look at the summary of 3 of the watersheds, you can see some of those red triangles. And as we develop these watershed plans, those are areas typically at some of the headwaters where we want to work with landowners and producers on developing wetlands that will have significant benefits, both obviously from a water quality perspective, but certainly from a water quantity. Some of the lines then that you see running adjacent to the streams, where we're going to be looking at edge of field practices, saturated buffers or bioreactors. Those have a more limited water quantity benefit, but there is certainly some to that, but definitely water quality. And then the yellow areas that you see are where we'd like to see more extensive adoption of cover crops and other things that are more focused on the water quality aspect. This is a more detailed, slightly larger version that kind of highlights again some of those areas where on another section in Miller Creek where we'll be where we'd like to see some of these practices adopted in our Middle Cedar work. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail at this point in terms of acres that we've already brought online or that kind of thing, but I just wanted to highlight what we're currently working on with the Middle Cedar. So I know that one of the questions typically in the when we talk about this project with others is will our watershed solutions happen fast enough to meet downstream needs? As you're going to see in a minute or two here when I start talking about 2016 and the flood we experienced very recently, this is obviously there are some immediate needs, immediate concerns, but when we got started with the Middle Cedar Partnership project, we knew that this was going to be a longer-term effort, and we're very pleased at this point to know that there are other projects coming online, some of which I'll be sharing information on here in the next slide, that we think will help improve the success of our interim flood control system efforts as well as ensure the effectiveness and resilience of our long-term flood controls. How do we connect with enough landowners and producers to make a difference? We're working in an area of 5 HUC 12 watersheds, like I said, about 130,000 acres. The area upstream of Cedar Rapids is approximately, in total, is approximately 6,500 square miles, extends up into southern Minnesota, ultimately drains through our community, and there we're dealing with upwards of 6 million acres total upstream of us. So certainly the idea behind our test case, if you will, is we know that talking about these efforts with landowners takes outreach, and that was a big part of our proposal to NRCS was to expand targeted outreach that allowed us, after we've done those watershed plans, to talk with producers and landowners directly in in areas that we think will have particular targeted benefits. And in the case of Cedar Rapids, obviously that includes talking about both projects or activities that would potentially reduce the amount of water runoff in terms of volume, but also improve the characteristics or improve the water quality of water, both from a surface and underground tile standpoint from those areas upstream of us as well. And we want to, a big part of our effort is to look at the intensity of those practices and then continue to conduct corresponding water quality monitoring to see how that benefits the system. As I noted, we're very pleased that we've been able to see some expanding opportunities. I do have some separate slides about this first one, the Iowa Flood Center HUD Disaster Resilience Grant, almost $97 million that the state of Iowa has received. I'll go into more detail with that on a separate slide. In the second round of RCPP funding, the Midwest Agriculture Water Quality Partnership was able to leverage $9.5 million, as you see, from NRCS for a project total of $47 million. Some state funding initiatives, both also in the Miller Creek, these kind of match up with our Regional Conservation Partnership Program, have received an additional 3-year allotment of funding both in the Miller Creek and Benton-Tama area. So those projects now will add up in both cases to over $1 million each that have been made specifically in those areas as well. These are some of the examples between the HUD Disaster Resilience Grant and the other second round RCPP funding that have both received additional programs that are coming online. These are just an example of some of the watersheds. Here we are in the Middle Cedar. This is an area of the Upper Cedar that have received funding and will be part of some of these projects going forward. I felt that it was important to specifically acknowledge some work that's being done for this HUD Disaster Resilience Grant. This outlines some of the specific areas that will be part of that. This grant in Iowa will be known as the Iowa Watershed Approach. It's being managed by the Iowa Flood Center, which is part of the there's the Iowa Hydraulics Research Area in the University of Iowa, and the Iowa Flood Center is one part of that. Approximately $30 million of that almost $97 million is being spent in Dubuque on some efforts in a urban creek there called Bee Branch Creek. I won't go into details on some of the other areas. I'd encourage you, I did provide information on where that website is. You can obtain more information on that. But again, some of the resources, approximately another $3 to $4 million from this funding pool, will be available to supplement some of the practices that we're currently involved with in the Middle Cedar area. They will occur in some watersheds a little bit south of the area that we're currently working in. But this just gives you an idea that they are now initiating some of their quarterly watershed meetings. They're going to have a meeting here early in January and meet some of the area that we currently serve. But we're very excited to be part of this effort, and I just thought it was really critical to highlight this because of, as I indicated, we are seeing a lot of additional efforts being started here in the state of Iowa. When you have a flood like we did back in 2008, you think, well, we hopefully won't have to deal with that again very soon. But unfortunately, on Wednesday, September 22nd, an area in just north of our Middle Cedar area in particular, in Floyd County received overnight anywhere from 8 to 12 inches of rain. That was a sufficient level that early on in the flood projections, we saw it go to 19 feet. Then based on some rainfall that the National Aerometrics and Aeronautics Administration was predicting, they thought that the flood potentially could get to 25.3. So we had 3 days to prepare for what we believed would be a 24 to 25 foot crest in Cedar Rapids. I'll refer to those levels, but as you can see here at the top of the graph was our 31.1 foot flood back in 2008. At the level of 25 feet, you can see from this inundation map, and I would point out that the Iowa Flood Center that I mentioned previously that has the Iowa watershed approach has created these inundation maps for a substantial portion of the state of Iowa. And obviously, as you can see here, they're very helpful in terms of trying to define what areas we need to protect at various elevation levels. Some of the immediate things that we did were to pull out our flood response plan, evaluate some of the interim flood response plan that we put together after the 2008 flood. And again, we're looking at all these specific areas. What do we need to do above ground, what we need to do below ground in terms of our stormwater system, how we're going to manage potential evacuation areas, and how we're going to communicate with our citizens and businesses. The first step that was done was to initiate a recommended or voluntary evacuation zone to the 26-foot flood crest. There was a curfew in this area. We had checkpoints. It was pretty critical because over that weekend we had to construct this system, and if we'd been dealing with sightseers or anybody else that didn't have to be there, it was going to make it very challenging to get this system online in that short period of time. One of the key steps from an above-ground standpoint were the use of HESCO walls and quickly constructed barriers. So keep in mind that we received notice on Wednesday that this was going to get to this level. Thursday was primarily spent on evaluating the interim system, updating the interim system, putting together a plan to manage it, and then ultimately construction started Friday night and really continued to move forward until the flood crest on the next Tuesday. As you can see, some of the tools that were necessary for this effort, the equipment that you see in this slide would typically be used to pump concrete. In this case, we were using it to put sand into the HESCO barriers. We ended up with 9 miles worth of those barriers. There weren't, in cases like this, you can see that there were actually multiple sets of HESCOs at one place. So there weren't necessarily 9 linear miles of HESCOs. There were cases where we actually had to stack numbers of them on top of each other to achieve the flood protection level that we believed that we were going to need. So then, again, in addition to the HESCOs, there were areas where we believed that construction of some temporary clay levees would be the most effective means of managing the projected crest. And keep in mind that all of that was constructed in under 4 days. We do have challenges when we look at this. There's a section of Cedar Rapids It is part of the lowest area of Cedar Rapids. It is affected by by river levels of as low as 20 feet. And with a projected 26 feet, you can see the ESCO system that we put in place to address that. When we worked with the Army Corps of Engineers, they looked at kind of the original line that we had, and they said, you're not going to be able to manage a ESCO system on that basis. It really needs a firm, solid street as a basis for that. So as you can see, we chose the 16th Avenue Street as the point where we constructed those ESCOs, and we did have people that were on the west side of that, and obviously were impacted by this flooding level. As it so happens, within 2 or 3 weeks after this, we'd already put together a bid to update the levee, a levee that would have protected this area, and it's actually currently under construction, but during the incident at the end of September, it was not necessarily in line yet. But as you can see, these choices that have to be made when you're putting up this system on a short-term basis. Again, some of the underground work, we don't have gates in place on many points on the stormwater system yet, so it takes a variety of means to protect those. Our private citizens responded aggressively, filled upwards of 400,000 sandbags were used in this effort. We kept regular updates on our website. We conducted, I believe, 9 or 10 straight days of daily press conferences to provide information on what was happening. So we were able to try and be as transparent as possible, and obviously even choices that were made with that flood protection system were addressed during these meetings as well. A lot of community pride in our ability to meet this need on a very short-term basis. Just a few other comments about that. We did have a variety of lessons learned. Again, we've upgraded some of the underground aspects, pump stations, that kind of thing that we recognize the need to have those pumps in place permanently, along with the gates that will prevent the river from backing up into that system, and that will be some of those projects have been moved up in our priority list. I am going to provide one slide from our flood protection system because I wanted to share how we've reduced flood risk, improved our resiliency from 2008. As you can see, we do have that interim plan. We had a voluntary property acquisition that mitigated a significant number of properties that would have been potentially directly affected by this 2016 flood. We've raised bridges. We've developed some portions of levee protection. Again, I highlighted the wells that we've raised, the system that we've installed at our water pollution control facility. And most importantly, we are continuing through our efforts with the Middle Cedar Partnership Project, as well as our membership in the Middle Cedar Watershed Management Authority, to look at opportunities in that upstream area, or upstream watershed area as well, in terms of trying to minimize some of that water quantity that we could see come downriver and affect Cedar Rapids. So that's what I have, and I look forward to getting to some of the questions that I see being posted on the chat segment as well. And with that, I'll pass it on to Brad Clammer.
Hello. Okay, I could start now, or we're saving the questions till after both of us go?
Yeah, we'll save questions to the end.
Okay, good. My name is Brad Clammer. I'm a senior city planner here in New Orleans. I work for the Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans, the public utility responsible for drainage, drinking water, and wastewater. I work in the Environmental Affairs Department, and my main duties are with stormwater management, so I'm going to speak mostly to that. I'll be able to talk a little bit about the other side of our company towards the end of my presentation and what we do to work with them. But mainly I am responsible for implementing our green infrastructure program here, and that's what we're looking forward to in the future and how to manage stormwater through an integrated approach. So why don't I go ahead and get started. So just a little bit of history. You know, our region here was basically formed and created by flooding. So of course this is alluvial flooding, and the mouth of the Mississippi has moved many times over thousands of years to create this land that we're on. And it's very important as we go forward in thinking about how we're managing our water, what should be done to sort of mimic what has been happening in the past, and how have we changed the hydrology of our region, and it's not reacting the way it should be naturally. You can see our watershed is very large, and we are in a situation now where the Mississippi River is in its current path and not really wanting to be there. So what we're trying to do is encourage infiltration into the ground of stormwater, and also protection from the coastal surging. I really like this map. This is sort of shows the last time we had a real flood from the river here in New Orleans. This is a large crevasse, and this was at a time when the city was starting to expand into the northern portion of the city, out of the near the river section. You can see, I'm not going to really talk about Hurricane Katrina and that, but if anyone has seen those maps, it really looks a lot like this from 1849. The lower section of the city filled up, sort of like a bowl. And if you look to the on the northern part of this map is basically what the land looked like before we built out into it and developed. We started building canals here to drain it. It was more of a swamp forest, very natural, a lot of bayous running through there that would also flood and create land. So there are high spots and low spots throughout the city that we live in now, created naturally. And of course there were 1927 floods of the Mississippi River, which really put the river protection and the levee building into place. We weren't in New Orleans affected by that flood, but really we have not been affected by an alluvial flood since this time. Of course, we've seen coastal flooding that has affected us. But really what I'm going to talk about today is pluvial flooding with a P, and that's really our main concern here, what we're working on, what I'm working on. New Orleans receives an average of 64 inches of rain per year, and these often come in large amounts all at once. We get 5-inch rainfalls, we get 10-inch. I mean, it's pretty often. And you can see some of these photos. The one on the left is from earlier this year. I took myself, and this is common in New Orleans. Everyone who lives here knows about this. And it's a challenge, and we're looking for different alternatives on how to work with this. But so since the Drainage Commission was formed here and combined with the sewer and water system in the early 1900s, one of our superintendents, A. Baldwin Wood, patented the wood screw pump, if you can see here. This is still in use today, and it's extremely innovative for its time and highly efficient and highly effective. We now have 24 drainage pump stations across the city for major drainage. We have, amongst those stations, there's 121 pumps, and they range in size. We have, as far as the canal system, we have 100 miles of open canals and 160 miles of covered canals that are subsurface, under streets and such. The Sewage and Water Board manages all the large drainage. We also have 1,800 miles of pipe, and Anything smaller than 36 inches is also managed by our Public Works Department. So we work in coordination with that city department to manage the entire drainage system as a whole. These pumps are very effective. The capacity flow rate is approximately 50,000 cubic feet per second, and that's actually more than the flow rate of the Ohio River. It can fill up an Olympic-sized swimming pool in 2 seconds, and it could fill up our Superdome in about 40 minutes, and it could empty Lake Pontchartrain in about 7 weeks. So that's pretty impressive, and it's still leading the world in as far as pumping capacity and what we're able to do and where we're able to live is really dictated on how our drainage system works. But as you can see, I'm going to go back one slide, it's not enough. We can actually handle 1 inch of rainfall over an hour and then half an inch every hour after that during a rain event. So that's basically 3 inches in a 5-hour period. And anything more than that, it's going to back up in the system and flood our streets because the streets are part of our drainage system. We have 50,000 plus catch basins that flow into our drainage system along the streets. So we're doing a lot. There's a lot of effort on how to manage flooding. So also there's some consequences with how we've been managing our stormwater the past 100 plus years. We have soils here in New Orleans, because of how the land was formed, is mainly clay soil and organic soil. Those are the two main types, and when those soils dry out, they'll either shrink and crack like the clay soils tend to do, or they'll oxidize, as the organic soils will begin to oxidize because they lose their moisture, and then they disappear, and so you can't get that back. So what happens is the land starts to shrink and subside and go down, and so some of these pictures show what's happening to a lot of our buildings around town, our streets, and our infrastructure. Houses that are built on piles are safe, but the ground around it will sink, and so it's something we're definitely concerned with. We've been studying effects of that. How can we mitigate that? How can we change what we've been doing that's been very effective and also work in coordination with that? So it's an integrated approach. Here's a slide that kind of shows a transect through the city from north to south, from the river to the lake, which actually shows some of the soil, some of the high points, and a lot of the city is below sea level. And so we're studying the soils, seeing where infiltration is possible, how to keep those soils moist. And of course, we're dealing with water quality issues. Where does all that water we pump go? It goes straight to the lake in most cases. So we don't have it, it's not treated. It's a MS4 municipal separate storm sewer system. And we've had TMDLs, we've had a consent decree, and so basically we're looking to improve the water quality that is pumped into the lake. We're doing a lot of different programs to do that, and the main program I'm working on is the green infrastructure approach. So this is basically mimicking the natural cycle of water, hydrology, encouraging infiltration and filtration. It's using plants and soils to hold water, either temporarily while the drainage system can catch up, or also permanently and infiltrate into our groundwater level. We do have a high groundwater table, but that's what it's supposed to be, and we want that to remain high to keep our soils moist. So it's about keeping that level, because we do experience a lot of drought here as well, in which case the groundwater level does go down, and we are also looking at monitoring that as well. We think this will save money, create jobs, better quality of life, the triple bottom line, social, economic, and environmental benefits to all of green infrastructure. So what I'm going to talk about now is what we're doing for green infrastructure. In 2014, in order to meet the requirements of the consent decree, we wrote a green infrastructure plan, which was submitted to the EPA and Department of Justice. And in that, we basically stipulated that we would spend $2.5 million over a 5-year period of our capital funds to create green infrastructure projects, educational programs, sort of outreach and demonstration projects across the city. And really what we're trying to do is start the discussion, start the movement towards this type of practice, whether it's through capital money, public money, or private investment. But this is really sort of the beginning of it for our city, and there's a lot more programs going on now. But when we started, we issued an RFP, basically a grant. So for the first year, we did $500,000, and we awarded 7 grants. And then in 2015, we did 3 more, and then 3 more again this current year. So a total of 13 projects have been funded, as well as a couple other initiatives that we have that are green infrastructure related. So what I'll do is I'll go through a couple of those projects specifically. Oh, here's a map that kind of shows where they are across the city. I kind of need to update the outreach dot because we've done a lot more since I did this map. Really trying to reach the entire city, all neighborhoods, and it's been very successful so far. This project is one of our first projects that we funded. It's an educational curriculum program. It's gotten a lot of press lately, and it's great. It's basically teaching teachers about our water system. It's a water literacy curriculum, basically, that you teach the teachers, they create the curriculum, and it was originally for a kindergarten through 4th grade school in our Central City neighborhood. Each grade level had their own custom designed water curriculum. And of course, this is with the idea that kids go home and teach their parents, but the kids grow up and become future leaders in our water sector. This is new. I mean, we have not had this type of programming within our schools here, and it's kind of surprising that we haven't done that, but this is the beginning. This is, of course, the ripple effect. It will spread to more schools, more regional, and maybe even national. We've gone on to, this program that was funded by us is completed, but we've gotten an EPA education grant to keep it going. We're really excited about that. Another program that we funded was called WaterWise, basically holding workshops, tabling at events, teaching about green infrastructure, rain barrel demonstration buildings, and then they also did a professional education program, sort of a certification locally for professionals in the field, teaching about these practices, teaching landscape architects, teaching landscapers and contractors and architects and builders about this and how to do this. There's an exam. There's going to be an online portion of it. I know that there's a green infrastructure certification program coming down from, I think, WEF on a national level, but this was sort of a way to get people engaged here locally. This is a project we funded, the Groundwork New Orleans. They took a vacant lot. One thing I should mention is all of our construction type projects had to be on public land. So we partnered with New Orleans Redevelopment Authority, who owns a lot of the vacant land in New Orleans. Basically, it's been vacant since Hurricane Katrina. And so there's a lot of empty lots, and we're looking at ways we can use these lots to as a stormwater management feature. They've also created a pavilion they do a lot of outreach. This project in particular used high school students called the Green Team to do all the work. So that the construction was done by volunteers on the Green Team. Here's another lot that is, we're not the only ones doing this type of investment. As I mentioned, NORA, New Orleans Redevelopment Authority, has many lots, and they've done this basically a similar layout here on a lot of their own lots. This is we call it a bioretention cell, where the water can go off the street into this lot. It can be filtered, and when it overflows, it's already gone through a filtration naturally through the plants and the soils that will eat pollutants. and then overflow it back into the drainage system or stay in there and infiltrate. This is another brand new one. These are very recent pictures, I think, from this week. We're having a ribbon cutting in a couple of weeks here. And this is a really cool demonstration project. Tulane City Center is an architecture. They work with the School of Architecture. There was a competition. Some of the professors were able to help design this. So what it is taking, it's sort of an inverted canopy structure that will channel water into 4 different spaces, and people can actually go and touch and feel, the water, and it'll feed into a couple of these rain gardens here around, and also into a cistern, and then like a water table. So it's really going to be a cool outreach feature for a neighborhood that's been underserved, and it's on a piece of land that we actually own. That used to be a rail right-of-way corridor. These are corner bump outs that are actually bioretention cells themselves on a smaller scale than a lot, where there's gaps in the curb that can go into the corner bump out and be filtered and then overflow. So this is at an intersection in the Tremaine neighborhood of New Orleans. It's been designed. We are partnering with the Public Works Department as they are also doing a street repair project in the neighborhood. And so we're going to be pairing this project with that for installation. This is really an exciting project that is brand new as well. It's on our own downtown administration building. It is a blue-green roof. Brand new. We're still working through some of the punch list items on it, and the grand opening will probably be around the first of the year. But the soils and the growing media and the plants are installed. It's going to be available for tours. In the rendering up there, you can see that there's like a penthouse unit that has a blue roof component. It will hold the water temporarily and discharge after a rain event. It will not hold the water for more than 48 hours. And then on the other roof level is where all the plants are. There's many different types of plants, from extensive sedum to wetland type plants. A lot of local native plants are in there. I have a full plant list here. Don't need to go through them all, but we're going to be experimenting, and it's a demonstration project that we're going to see what's successful, what needs to be replaced. It's going to be, really sort of exciting to go through this, because it's the first green roof that we know of in New Orleans and the region, and maybe even the South. So maybe if someone else knows of something at this scale, we could type it in the chat room. But anyway, hopefully during some of these conferences that come down, we'll have opportunity to go up there and take a look. We have another green roof and blue roof that's going to be right after this one. It's on a school, also down in the Central Business District, where there's not a lot of green space. We have a blue roof section on the top, channels down into a green roof section outside of the Environmental Science Department, and then it will overflow down into an on-grade bioswale. So this is scheduled for construction this month. It'll be breaking ground on that. So we're also doing a lot of monitoring. This is a EPA Urban Waters grant. This is actually the reason I'm involved with the River Network, and Deanna gone to past 2 river rallies. So we have this project to thank for my speaking here today, I suppose. So what we did here is the city, actually Nora again, received a FEMA hazard mitigation grant for taking this neighborhood and installing 50-plus green infrastructure type installations, from streets to vacant lots to there's a dry canal that's going to be retrofitted, corner bump outs, and all throughout this neighborhood where there's been a lot of flooding throughout the years. I think this is a $15 million construction project, but back when this was awarded, they were not allowed to spend any of that money on water quality and water quality monitoring. So they partnered with us, and we got an EPA Urban Waters grant to do the water quality portion of it. So we've been out there for the past year taking baseline data before the project is installed. So we have 5 sites where we are taking grab samples, taking them for lab analysis, many different parameters, nutrients, oils, biological. So taking all that data, they're going to build the project hopefully very soon, and then we're going to go back for a year afterwards, and these are certain sites that there's going to be a feature there, and then we'll be able to compare the data before and after, see how effective green infrastructure actually is in improving water quality and filtering the pollutants as we expect that it is. So more analysis and monitoring we're doing is actually studying the soils specifically here. As you can see, the map there, the NRCS map, is we're finding it's mainly inconsistent with what is actually there. So what we've done is we've gone in and taken about 50 samples across the city, and also done infiltration testing and using different techniques, partnered with the EPA to do this, Office of Research and Development, and a local contractor for the Geo Probe. So we're hoping to create basically a new base map which shows more accurate soil data, where green infrastructure is suitable across the city, and where we can implement it successfully, and where it won't just hit a clay barrier and not infiltrate. So all this data will be used on various tools that we have, like this one. This is funded by a couple foundations, and as well as some local funding. Trust for Public Land has been developing this over the past year, very close to being ready for use. Taking different data, we're looking at basically their goals are cool, connect, absorb, and protect. And so there's different ways of gathering that data and using it to create layers within your map. And so what the ultimate goal of this is to identify areas in the city which are going to be successfully installed green infrastructure practices, stormwater, where are the needs. We're also looking at social and vulnerability data, demographic data, and also critical infrastructure that needs to be protected, seeing where specifically we need to invest, and using this tool in the early planning stages to do that. The next stage, we'll be looking to use this tool, which was developed, funded by Sewage and Water Board, partnered with the city, New Orleans Redevelopment Authority, funded by a Dutch firm, Deltaris, which is really like a mapping tool. It's actually taking a project area, and what you do is you choose different types of measures to install, and then it spits out outputs on how effective those measures are, and how much stormwater you're capturing, and how much of the heat island effect you're reducing, and things like that. How much it would cost, what your budget looks like, and so it's meant to be used on a touch table platform. It's portable. You can take it around and show it to community stakeholders, have a workshop, where they can actually touch and learn and help the early planning process for large-scale projects, influence and what they actually want to see. We're really excited to get this out there and start using it. We also think it would help our own departments, our capital projects, how we would include green infrastructure alongside, say, a road project, a road replacement project, or a new pipe that needs to be put into a certain neighborhood. How can we put green infrastructure in there as well? So we've been including a lot of different data into this tool, and so it'll be available probably around the first of the year as well. So, as I mentioned, a lot of interagency collaborations. We're working with the City Planning Department. The Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, which came out last year, has a new article that requires stormwater management for all new developments. And capturing 1.25 inches of stormwater on the lot. We're working with them to review permit applications. We're looking at specifically my department looks at the water quality portion of it. But we're helping because we're creating a new toolkit that will be available very shortly as well. It's about 75% complete at this point, which will provide standard details for different types of green infrastructure. It'll create, we're creating a plant list, all native plants that are suitable for this area, drought resistant and flood resistant as well. And then we're also creating a stormwater calculator that's basically an Excel spreadsheet that's highly customized to our city. We know that there's many out there that other cities have done in the EPA stormwater calculator, but we wanted one more customized for here. It'll help with developers and applicants of the stormwater management plan, and it'll help reviewers as well. We are also at the 1-year anniversary of our Resilient New Orleans plan. Of course, the master plan, which is being updated right now, and the urban water plan, which was in 2013. These are all guiding documents that we use, and they're helping us move forward. So with the resiliency plan, we also received a HUD grant from the NDRC National Disaster Resilience Competition. We have $141 million to spend. This is the city. We are also a partner on the team. We've created a district, the Gentilly Resilience District, to install a lot of large-scale type green infrastructure projects. So this is still in development. We're still in the early design phase. Parks and playgrounds will be used for capturing the water, vacant lots. We're going to encourage homeowners to do it on their own private land as well. Down in the middle, that's one of the first projects that is really moving forward. Got extra funding, another FEMA HMGP grant to create a large demonstration park called the Mirabou Water Garden, which was actually part of the urban water plan as well, which was a more of a regional look at how to change the way we are managing stormwater here, Jefferson Parish, Orleans Parish, and St. Bernard Parish. This was a lot of discussion with various stakeholders, looking at the way the Dutch are doing it, and looking at how to handle the canal system, making it more beautiful, and how to manage stormwater basically differently than we have been past 100 years or so. There's a lot of I wouldn't say grassroots, but since Katrina, it's just been very exciting, I guess, to see all the individual stakeholders, groups that have come out of that really wanting to do something to help and change the way we're doing it. And so the Greater New Orleans Water Collaborative we've done a great job of gathering all the right players, different organizations, nonprofits, private organizations, and also government. So they have different working groups. They host different types of events and workshops regularly, monthly, looking at everything from coastal issues to urban water issues. We work with them a lot, different working groups that we're actively engaged with. Also, many foundations have been involved. We are one of the 100 resilient cities. Greater New Orleans Foundation, we work with a lot of different ways. They've hosted what's called the Urban Water Series, where they've brought experts from other cities to hold workshops. They've taken us and many city agency people to other cities to learn what they're doing, such as Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Austin. And they're also bringing more experts down to hold full-day workshops, intensive workshops, and that's actually starting in a couple weeks. Foundation for Louisiana is doing some workforce development and job creation type initiatives as well. So to sort of go along with how this webinar series is discussing integrated water management, I hope this doesn't seem like a footnote. It's just not my specialty in what I do from day to day, but we do work with the wastewater department and sewer treatment plant operators. We are looking at, our department specifically does a lot of outreach. We are looking at restaurants, and we have a fats, oil, and grease program that identifies, because a lot of our sewer overflows are caused by grease buildup and blockages from that, which could easily be fixed. It really takes outreach, looking at the restaurants, seeing if their grease traps are up to size, because sewer overflows, that becomes a stormwater issue, so that's really why we're looking at that. That could overflow into our stormwater system. We're looking at if there's any correlation between our sampling program and sewer overflows as well. We are also building a wetlands assimilation project. This is not online yet, but at some point, hopefully in the next year, we will be discharging some of our wastewater treated effluent into isolated cells within this central wetlands unit that will help recreate the wetlands in this area of the city. And we all know the wetlands are so important in helping with storm surge. And then with the water department, again, we're also doing a lot of outreach. We help with the air permit. We've been helping out with water sampling. We sometimes have boil water advisories here in New Orleans. If power goes out, we help with going out and taking samples, making sure that the water is safe. We're also helping out with the lead and copper rule, sending out test kits around the city. And then just with this photo here is our department at Parking Day, and we offered a water bar to our community who was walking around the street downtown. It was pretty fun. But so that's sort of what we do as far as the water department. And then I think I've given a pretty good overview of what I do specifically. Hopefully I can answer some of your questions as they roll in. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you to both Brad and Steve for those interesting presentations, and we saw lots of questions coming in throughout both talks, so wanted to get to all of them, but I thought that one to kick it off that worked well for both of you relates to citizen engagement and outreach. And we noticed you both have robust programs in that vein, and wondering if you can address, this will be a two-part question, but how you get feedback on your projects using outreach and how you measure the success of your outreach programs. I noticed very numeric goals for some of the watershed plans and the like, but when it comes to those softer skills like citizen outreach, what's your baseline and what are you working towards? Steve, you want to start?
Sure. I think in terms of, I guess I look at outreach in a couple of different ways. Obviously, we are working on outreach directly with farmers and landowners in that Middle Cedar area watershed. We, in conjunction with the Iowa Soybean Association, hired a subcontractor, Jason Gomes, who contacts farmers directly to share information on reimbursable practices, and he can also start development of conservation plans which are necessary to receive RCPP funding. When we talk about citizen or customer comments on our engagement with the Middle Cedar Partnership Project, for example, just this past Tuesday night, we offered a two-part series, one kind of focused on staff in the afternoon and the other with the community in the evening, where we called it our Sustainable City Talks series, and what we're doing in our watershed is certainly an important aspect of that. We had about 70 attendees from our staff and partners in the afternoon and about 140 attendees from the community in the evening. And we heard a lot of positive comments about our watershed work. We also have a dedicated website that we take comments from. Haven't seen too many have had more general comments from Facebook, other social media talking about their support of a watershed project as well. And I had to mention, just because I enjoyed that aspect of Brad's talk, that as a result of the 2008 flood, we did build a new library, and as part of that, we do have a green roof on that library that uses a cistern system for capture. We use sedum specifically in our roof here in Cedar Rapids. With that, I'll turn it over to Brad for his comments.
So the way we measure success for outreach, up till now, I would say it's really just been the projects we've funded have turned in quarterly reports that specifically say where they went and how many people attended, and then kind of give their opinion on how the event went, and we've been counting that and keeping track. But just recently, the Sewage and Water Board has gone into a cooperative endeavor agreement with the Greater New Orleans Foundation, who I mentioned earlier, to create an outreach strategy for the Sewage and Water Board in the city as a whole. We've gone out for RFP and contracted an agency for marketing. GNOF, or Greater New Orleans Foundation, has co-funded this communications campaign, and they will be working with us to oversee the work of the marketing firm. So this is going to be a really intensive campaign that's really about to start, and hopefully I'll be able to come back and explain how well that's going. But again, we're sort of at the beginning of this, and all these new programs are happening as we speak, and we're moving forward. Hopefully we'll get a lot of feedback back on this, and as far as feedback on our specific projects, they haven't been in the ground long enough, I wouldn't say, to really get that, but from what I've heard, it's been successful, by word of mouth.
That's great. This is a question originally posed to Steve, but I think it's applicable to both of you. The inundation maps are really helpful to understand the risk. So I would say to Brad and Steve, knowing what you know now with regards to flood levels and risks, have there been any changes to city planning and zoning and development based on this research and knowledge, i.e. where buildings can be placed, renovated, removed, reducing new development that will be at risk? Steve, you want to start again?
You want to? Who did you say to start again? Sorry.
Oh, I just said Steve.
Okay, I'll go quickly here. This isn't my particular area, but I am aware of one area in particular, that Nubo area that I mentioned, is a historic district. So existing buildings do receive some grandfathering as it relates to if they choose to remodel or reconstruct the buildings, that they do not need to. They may take steps, obviously, to move infrastructure from the basement to roofs, but they do not have to make other significant changes to the actual building structure. Now, buildings that are constructed, new buildings, in any area that is within that 100-year floodplain, and obviously you can see the inundation maps identify that very clearly, foundations of those buildings have to be elevated to a 100-year flood level. So in that new bow area, we've had a couple of new buildings constructed, and when you see those buildings where they are literally 5 to 6 feet above the sidewalk level, where the first floor is on those buildings to meet that 100-year floodplain level requirement.
So for us, a lot of that in the inundation maps, of course, came from Hurricane Katrina, and this is a coastal issue. So we have a state coastal protection and restoration authority that has a master plan. There's going to be an update next year. A lot of master plan community meetings are happening now, but they're really looking at how a lot of the parishes that are on the coast and not really protected are going to be planned for the next 50 to 100 years. For New Orleans specifically, where we are protected, we have a new surge protection barrier that has gone around a big wall around our city, and we're protected for, I believe, a 500-year storm. And it's actually contributed to the FEMA flood maps and the National Flood Insurance Program, taking us out of the special flood hazard area, and that's actually reduced flood insurance for everyone. Not everyone, actually. It's weird. Some neighborhoods went up, but for the majority of the city, I would say 90% actually did go down. So that's kind of where we're at here for inundation maps.
Great, thank you. Brad, a question for you. And this is very interesting to me. I haven't heard this one before. So I know there are programs in Louisiana that work to recycle spent oyster shells to restore oyster reefs and help provide buffers against storm surge and erosion. But have you considered, or is there currently a program involved with your project that works to recycle oyster shells along the coast of Louisiana? Any thoughts on that technique and its potential value for Louisiana river water quality?
Well, yeah, us specifically, probably not, but that is definitely going on around the city, around the region. Really, we've been a part of a lot of. There's this water challenge that is every year hosted by Entrepreneur Week, which a couple of these projects, exactly what you described, an oyster reef placed in like Lake Pontchartrain or somewhere else on the coast in southern Louisiana, to create a barrier reef to knock down surge and also help rebuild the oyster population and create an estuary behind it. And these are happening. I guess I would say specifically for Sewage and Water Board, we're not doing that, but so there are grant funding opportunities through foundations, as far as research and development and innovative technology and entrepreneurship. But we definitely support these programs, but I'm not sure how, right now how we would get into that, but it's great. So.
Great. And Steve, I have a couple questions for you from Stephanie. Mm-hmm. First, the photos you had on what you did in the latest flood emergency were really impressive, and wondering were the flood impacts downstream of those emergency barriers. That's question one. And then question two is more general. How do you go about selecting priority areas and practices for the Cedar River, and were any models used?
As it relates to the flood impacts downstream from the interim system that we put in place, that, given the fact that it was a 22-foot flood, there did not seem to be an issue for 2016. I will say that as we look at the permanent flood protection system, that we are constantly evaluating hydrologic models in conjunction with our engineering consultants and the Army Corps of Engineers to ensure that as different steps of that permanent protection system are put into place, that we don't exacerbate or overwhelm other elements of that permanent system and certainly interim steps that we're taking. I would point out that we tried to develop some of those considerations because our wastewater treatment facility is downstream, and we recognize that there could be some changes, but if you can recall from that earlier picture of the 2016 event, there's a substantial amount of lower areas on the west bank of the river that kind of mitigate some of those levels once it gets downstream to us. As we talk about how do we develop priority practices for, I would say, on the water quantity basis, we have not identified specific models yet where we think that we might get our biggest bang for the buck, if you will. I think that may change now that we've got the HUD resiliency grant online with the Iowa watershed approach. With some of their technical capacity, I think we may be able to fine-tune some of that. The watershed plans that you did see that were in my presentation are pretty specifically focused on the water quality aspects, primarily nitrate runoff. The watershed plans were put together by a couple of our partners in the Middle Cedar Project, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Sand County Foundation. The Sand County involvement was they specifically wanted to be involved in development of those watershed plans and to help guide and direct where some of those practices might make the most sense. We also work with the Iowa Soybean Association to conduct surface water monitoring. Again, that's not, at this time, that's not directly for a water quantity aspect. It is more targeted from the water quality side. But we have obtained a lot of information on surface water levels for nitrates prior to installation of a lot of these practices that we've already seen put into place, like bioreactors and cover crops, and we anticipate continuing that monitoring during the duration of this project and after to see how we're doing in terms of making an impact on those water quality parameters.
That's great, thank you. And two last questions for Brad. First, do you know how your tools and calculator are different or similar to the EPA stormwater calculator? And then the second, given the volume of rain you're dealing with in New Orleans, how much green infrastructure would you need to install to have a significant impact? And what's kind of the upper limit of the benefits that green infrastructure can provide and the main barriers to scaling it up to that level?
Very good questions. Well, for the tools, well, these are highly customized using all our own data sets that we have available to input into these GIS type tools specifically for this city. You know, I don't really know of any, as far as those two mapping tools, the Climate Smart Cities tool and the Adaptation Support tool, I don't know of any other city using something like that to plan and design and prioritize where they're going to invest. There are, of course, swim modeling and engineering models you can do. hydraulic models, but this is more of a early stage before you do the swim model and actually really get into the numbers. So this is going to help in the planning stages. And as far as the calculator, again, it's highly customized for our use. We have a comprehensive zoning ordinance that has a stormwater regulations for developers and anyone doing a project with a site of over 5,000 square feet of impervious surface has to comply, and so this helps calculate the runoff coefficient using standardized, like everyone uses the same set, everyone uses the same format, and it's just going to help streamline everything. It's going to help out the developers and making that process faster, and then helping the reviewers to review. So, you know, we used other cities' calculators as examples in developing that. I think a couple in particular, like Austin, I think Seattle. But, and then, of course, the EPA stormwater calculator is there as well. And then as far as how much it would take, well, that's a good question. You know, so the Urban Water Plan, livingwithwater.com is the website to that, and that kind of really looks at it as again, it's a regional thing, so it's more than just my parish that I work in, but the three parishes adjacent to each other, and it's upwards of in the billions. I mean, it would take a lot to really get to where we think we are, and so I would encourage looking at that plan and looking at their metrics and how they came up with the numbers. You know, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but it is something we're considering. As far as what I do, you know, personally in our department, we are funded. Our green infrastructure program is a capital budget out of our drainage funding, and so as far as long-term funding goes, again, we've been spending $500,000 a year for the past 5 years. We're up for a drainage millage renewal actually next week, and this is something that's a 30-year renewal. It's a property tax that has been existing, and it's really the main funder of our drainage program, and it's going to be voted on, and hopefully it passes in the next week or so, and that way we can continue doing these great projects, continue the maintenance of the drainage plan, integrating our system, gray and green, and really building out our green infrastructure program. So it's kind of a timely question there. Thank you.
Great answers. Thank you. Well, we're coming up on 2:30, and so I just really wanted to thank both of our presenters, Steve and Brad. The work you're doing is truly impressive, and also a testament to the great partnerships you have in the region. I noticed you both gave great deference to your partners and the collaborative work that you're doing. So thank you for sharing your lessons with us, and we would be remiss if we didn't mention a couple events we have coming up. On the U.S. Water Alliance side, we have another webinar in 2 weeks on accelerating innovation in the water sector. There's a link to sign up right there. We'll have Karen Palanch, the CEO of Alex Renew, and also Al Cho, the Vice President for Strategy at Xylem, joining us for that webinar. So hope you can join us for that. And then the River Network has their River Rally coming up next spring in Grand Rapids. And Deanna, any last words you'd like to say before we sign off?
Yeah, I would just remind folks at River Rally we have our annual face-to-face meeting of the Urban Waters Learning Network. So again, let us know if you're interested in learning more about the network or joining the network. And that is where we're going to host ongoing conversations about how you can bring integrated water management approaches to your own community. So would love to hear from folks who are interested in participating in those. But again, I'll just reiterate again, thanks to Brad and Steve for these great presentations today. Good work.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.